There is a political firestorm kicking up in Washington, and it's all centered on a really serious accusation: spying. Today, we're going to break down this whole controversy involving the former Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi, the Department of Justice, and the explosive Jeffrey Epstein investigation. We'll get into who's saying what these claims are really about, and why both sides are digging in for a major fight.
So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll unpack what this new Spygate claim is all about. Then we'll introduce the central figure, Pam Bondi, before looking at the two conflicting arguments head-on. After that, we'll see how Congress is getting involved, and we'll wrap up by exploring why this debate actually matters, way beyond the DC headlines.
Okay, so what is this new Spygate thing, really? Well, at its core, it's a powerful accusation, one that suggests there's been a fundamental breach of trust at the very highest levels of our legal system. And this is the question at the center of it all. Is the Department of Justice actually using its immense power to spy on political figures? Or is this a totally legitimate investigation that's being twisted for political reasons? Let's dive in.
To really get why this has become such a huge national story, we have to talk about the person at the center of it, Pam Bondi. Her political weight is what turns this from just a legal dispute into a potential political crisis.
So who is she? Well, Pam Bondi is not just any lawyer. We're talking about the former Attorney General for the state of Florida and a very well-known and influential voice in conservative legal circles.
You know, Pam Bondi's career really places her right at that intersection of law and politics. From her time as Florida's top prosecutor to her very high-profile role during the Trump presidency, she's become a major player. So this isn't just some random person making a claim. Her status guarantees that when she speaks, a big part of the country is listening, and that immediately puts the Department of Justice on the defensive.
All right, now we're getting into the heart of it. The accusation versus the response. This is where two completely different versions of reality just collide head-on.
The accusation itself is pretty blunt. Republican lawmakers are claiming the DOJ used the massive, sprawling Jeffrey Epstein investigation as a kind of cover to illegally spy on conservatives. The argument they're making is that this wasn't really about Epstein, it was about targeting political opponents like Pam Bondi and others connected to Donald Trump.
So here are the two competing stories. On one side, you have allegations of politically motivated spying that went way beyond legal boundaries. And on the other side, the DOJ's defense is that this was all just standard, by-the-book procedure, completely authorized by the courts as part of a really complex and legitimate investigation.
For the critics, what they see as the motive here is everything, and that's exactly why you're hearing the term Spygate again. It's a very deliberate callback to that 2016 controversy over the surveillance of Trump campaign officials. By using that term, they are trying to frame this not as a one-off thing, but as part of what they see as a pattern of political targeting by federal law enforcement.
In response, the Department of Justice has been firm. Officials are saying that all their investigative methods, especially in a case as high-profile as the Epstein probe, were done by the book. They insist that any surveillance was carried out with a judge's sign-off, just like the law requires, and they're pushing back hard on any suggestion that this was improper or politically motivated.
Well, as you might expect, this was never just going to be a war of words. The battle has now officially moved to Capitol Hill, where Congress is stepping in.
And this is basically the playbook for how a congressional inquiry gets going. Republican members have sent out formal letters demanding information. They're asking for internal DOJ documents and emails, and they want key officials to come in and testify under oath. This is how they're trying to find some concrete proof to back up their allegations.
And it's probably no surprise that this fight is breaking down right along party lines. Republicans are using their power in Congress to demand answers. At the same time, Democrats are pushing back, arguing that these are just baseless claims designed to undermine the justice system for political points. It's a classic Washington tug-of-war over the power of our federal institutions.
So, why should you care about all this political back and forth? Because this whole controversy gets at some really fundamental questions about our government and our legal system.
Yeah, this is about so much more than just one case. It brings up these huge questions, like, what are the limits of government power? Can we trust our law enforcement agencies to be nonpartisan? And it's a really stark look at just how deeply national politics can get tangled up with major legal cases. How you see this issue really shapes your view on the nature of justice and power in America. And this is probably the key thing to remember for now. We are in a vacuum of hard evidence. Without public documents or official reports, this entire debate is being fought with stories and interpretations, not with facts. Both sides have a narrative, but right now, neither one has presented the proof to end the argument.
Which brings us to the final question we all have to ask ourselves. Is this a legitimate concern about government overreach that absolutely needs to be investigated? Or is it a case of very clever political framing designed to score points and undermine an institution? At this point, the answer depends entirely on who you ask.